Hola, buenos días. Hoy estamos trabajando en la lección 9. We're going to be starting off on pages 310 and 311 in your Visas textbook. We're going to begin our discussion with the irregular preterites. And this is kind of a place where memorization comes into play. I know that you've heard me say a lot probably with the review sessions that we do, but with the irregular preterites, there's no way to know unless you have them memorized that these certain verbs that are listed here on page 310 are special. It really requires memorization on your part. One way that we try and make it easier to try and memorize these guys is to divide them up into different groups based on how their spelling change looks. For example, there's a U group with poder, poner, saber, and a star. There's a group that has I's that change, and they include querer and hacer. And there's a group they call the J group that includes traer, conducir, and traducir. And all of these verbs that are irregular preterites from the U group and the I group will have the exact same endings. The endings are a, iste, o, imos, and ieron. In the J group, the endings are almost exactly the same, except in the third person plural, instead of ieron, it's just eron. Okay, so like instead of it being trajeron, it's trajeron. It's the only difference that's there, and really, they have to be memorized. I can't stress that enough. Um, Practicing them, writing them out, making flashcards, whatever it takes for you to get it, into your head, which verbs are the irregular ones and how they change. Whatever you need to do to memorize them. There's also up at the top of page 311 the preterite of the verb dar, which means to give, and it's di, diste, dio, dimos, dieron, and that's another one that you just have to memorize. What I'd like for us to do right here is a little bit of practice. With some of these verbs that have irregular preterites. I don't have any students in here with me this morning, so I'll fill these out. Cristina y Lara blank en la fiesta anoche, and the verb is to be. The verb that we need to use is, because it's telling where they were, is estar. So estar's stem is estuve, and for Cristina y Lara, they'll get estuvieron. Okay, and let me put that. Okay, so it's the verb estar. Its irregular preterite stem is estuve, and then you add your ending to it. So in this case, it's the ieron for estuvieron. Okay, yo blank un problema con mi pasaporte. I had a problem with my passport. Yo tuve un problema. To have is the verb tener, and its stem is tuve. And then for the yo form in the preterite, for the irregular preterites, the ending is an E. Rafaela vino temprano a la fiesta. She came early to the party. So we're looking at the verb venir, and its stem is vin. Su amigo, to make un brindis por los novios. Su amigo hizo un brindis por los novios. Let's see. And this one's special. We need to talk about him. Because the verb to do or make is the verb hacer. Its irregular preterite stem is Hic, H-I-C, but you'll notice that I typed H-I-Z-O. The way it gets conjugated, let me do it over here real quick. Hice, hiciste, hizo, hicieron. With the third person singular there being hizo, the Z changes to C there to keep that same sound. Hice, hiciste, hizo, hicimos, hicieron. If you were to keep it the same stem, you would have this word, and it's pronounced ico, and you're getting a k sound rather than the s sound. Sometimes if you can understand why the changes are the way they are, it helps make more sense. The next one that we have, Ricardo blank las maletas en el carro, puso, and the verb that we're working with is poner, and the stem is pus. Okay, and since it's he, luggage in the car, we would use puso is the ending there. And you'll notice that the endings on the irregular preterites don't have accent marks, which is something easier to remember, but you are having to memorize a new set of endings, the iste, o, imos, and ieron. And just remember that with the J group, instead of ieron, it's just E-R-O-N, eron. All right. Again, if you have any questions with this as you're going through and doing the practice, you may want to go back through and check out the Estructura section for Lesson 9 with the 9.1 and 9.2. It's explained in a lot more detail, and we go through all the different groups and the different verbs that are in there. This is just kind of meant to be a review and practice. If you haven't been through that other one, it might be helpful for you to go through that. Let's see, and I see that Melissa is in here. My door chime didn't ding, but can you hear me, Melissa?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. Good. Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here this morning. I was just going over the verbs that are irregular in the preterite from section 9.1, and I was just finishing up there. I was getting ready to go to the next question. I saw that you came in, so we'll go ahead and do this question. If you'll answer this, and if you're watching this at home later, if you'll take a second and answer this question and click submit, that's just my way of helping everyone get the credit they deserve for being in here. Okay. The next thing that I wanted us to talk about this morning, if it'll pull up, are the que, cual, and cuales. Those are the interrogative words that are found on page 316. This can be a little bit tricky if you don't study the differences between them because they all mean the same thing, what or which. Que is more about defining something. What is flan if you've never had it before and don't know what it is. Cual and cuales is more the word which, like choosing amongst several options. Which is your favorite? Which do you prefer? Que is more asking for an explanation, like what are you doing? Cual and cuales are not supposed to be used before a noun. That's like the one rule that will kind of help you determine whether you need que or cual. Another way to kind of figure it out is by what it's asking. If you look, for example, like at number 3 right here, blank prefieres el vestido largo o el vestido corto. When you have a choice amongst one or more items, which do you prefer? That's what it's asking. You know that it's going to need to be the word cuál or cuáles, depending on what it is that it's asking you. Okay. Another example, number 2 here, the word zapatos, shoes, is a noun. So even though it's asking which shoes do you like the most, and obviously there's more than one pair to choose from, you would think that was cuál or cuáles because it's asking you to choose amongst, several pairs of shoes to pick your most favorite one. But because the word zapatos is a noun, we can't use cuál or cuáles there. Okay, so those are just things to consider as we go through this practice. Melissa, if you feel comfortable trying to answer any of these, in the lower left-hand corner, you can text in your answer if you want to try and do these with me. If you just prefer to listen, that's okay too. I'll fill them out either way. But this first one, blank estás haciendo ahora. Which one would we use? Either qué, cuál, or cuáles? Which one would make the most sense there? This one's asking, what are you doing right now? And that's sort of asking for an explanation. So this one would be qué, what are you doing right now? Because estás haciendo ahora is saying, are you doing right now? And so that's asking for an explanation. What exactly are you doing? Like you walk in on a small child who's has a huge mess around them or something, and it's like, what exactly are you doing? And you're asking for an explanation. So that's K. What would we do with this next one? Número 2, blank zapatos te gustan más. This one would be K, you're right, because it's the word zapatos is a noun. And a noun, remember, when you're talking about grammar and parts of speech, a noun is just any person, place, or thing. So if it's a person, place, or thing, you have to use K there. Good job, Melissa. What about número 3? Blank prefieres, el vestido largo o el vestido corto? And it's asking which do you prefer? Yeah, and you would use the cuál. Which do you prefer, the long dress or the short dress? Let me get that guy on there. There we go. ¿Cuál prefieres, el vestido largo o el vestido corto? And this last one says, blank son las tiendas más elegantes del centro. So más elegantes is asking the most elegant. So it's saying which are the most elegant stores of the downtown. Because centro significa downtown. And you're exactly right, Melissa. They're asking you to pick amongst all the stores in the downtown which are the most classy or elegant ones. And so we would use cuáles because we're picking more than one. And we know that because of this verb son here, but also las tiendas más elegantes del centro. So on your test that you have for this week that's due by the end of the day Sunday for lesson 9, you'll definitely have a section with K and cuál and cuáles. And it's very similar to what you'll see here. It could be where you're typing in the answer. It could also be multiple choice. And if you're going strictly by translation, what makes sense, each of these 3 answers could make sense because all 3 of them mean what or which. So you'll get in trouble if that's the only criteria you know for answering these. The big thing to remember is that cuál and cuáles cannot be used before a noun. Okay, so that's one rule that will apply every single time. And know that K is used to ask for a definition or an explanation. So like with number 1, what are you doing right now, is asking, explain yourself. What are you doing? Cuál and cuáles are used to choose among several options. That's one way to explain it. The book says it a little differently. Is used when there's a choice among several possibilities. It's the same idea. When you're asked to choose amongst different things, you're going to use cuál and cuáles, unless it's coming before, the word you need is coming before a noun. And in that case, you'll use K instead. Okay? Melissa, do you have any questions with these interrogative words? No? Okay. I've got one more question for you to answer, and then we'll move on to the next slide. If you could just answer this real quick, whether it's true or false, and click submit, and then we'll move on. Okay. Let me grab this guy. The last thing that I want us to talk about this morning are the pronouns after prepositions. This is the information that's in section 9.4. It's on page 318. There's 3 prepositions that we're kind of looking at here. Entre means between, para means for or to, and con means with. So I'm just going to put this underneath here. Between, for, and with are the meanings of those 3. So entre is between, para is for, and con is with. When you are trying to express, between you and me, between us, between them, we'll start with entre. It's right here. Entre tú y yo, entre nosotros, entre ellos. Your pronouns are going to stay the same. Just like, when you conjugate a verb, your pronouns are yo, tú, usted, él, ella, nosotros, ustedes, ellos, ellas. Nothing special is happening with your pronouns when you use the word between. So if you're saying between you and me, between us, between them, between you guys, entre ustedes, all of those, you're going to use that same original pronoun. When you're using para, and also when you're using con, if you'll look, let me try and see if I don't think that's going to work. Hang on just a second. Let me get the square one. That might work better. If you look at these guys, the third person singular, the first person plural, and the third person plural on both of these, whether you're saying for him or her, for us, for them, you'll notice that you are using the original pronoun. It's just the yo form and the to form on both of these that have something special going on. Instead of saying para yo, you say para mí, and it's the me that has the accent mark over the I. Instead of saying para tú, you say para ti, and it doesn't have an accent mark. To say with me, you don't say con yo, you say conmigo, and it's all one word there, conmigo. Instead of saying con tú, you say contigo. Okay. All the other forms, though, saying with him, with us, with them, you actually use the original pronoun. So para nosotros or con nosotros. All right. That's the main thing with these, is realizing that the yo form and the to form for and with have something special going on. And I want to take just a second to look at the difference between these 3 words, because a lot of times students don't necessarily know the difference in the meaning, and they can get frustrated if they're losing points for spelling, or for having an accent mark or not having an accent mark. Hang on, let me add one more here. These are the ones that I think just seeing, when I grade student work, that people have the most trouble with realizing the differences on. We know that me, the MI with the accent mark, that one's like to or for me. If you have a me or para me, is me. May, Melissa, do you know what may or me or me's are? Okay, me and me's are both my. They're the possessive. So like, if you were going to say my book, you'd say mi libro. If you had several books, you would say mis libros. So they both mean my, and the way you use them differently is whether what you're owning that you're saying is mine is singular or plural. Me with the accent mark is me, like to me or for me. And may in Spanish is hang on just a second, to me or for me, is either the direct object or the indirect object pronoun. It's the same one either way. That means to me or for me. Okay, so like if it says, él me trajo flores. He brought me flowers. The me is he brought the flowers to me is what's happening there. Okay. Here's another way to write it. The same idea. Él trajo flores para mí. And same idea, but they're different words. I just want you guys to see the difference between these, because as you do, especially as far along as you are in Spanish 2, you're doing a lot more writing on your own. And it gets confusing sometimes with all these different ideas in your head, and you knew it when you learned it the first time, whenever that might have been, but somehow putting it all together can be a little bit tricky. So these are some of those me-ish, my-ish kind of words that get jumbled up. Me and me's both mean my, and they show possession. Me with an accent mark is the word me in English. It can be used with for me, to me, and then may means to me or for me, and it's an indirect or a direct object pronoun. It depends on how you're using it. Él me trajo flores. You could say, él me habló. He called me. And that would be it as a direct object pronoun. Okay, so those are just, it's not world peace or anything, but it's just kind of putting it all together. The other section that was in this book, in this lesson, was section 9.2. It's on page 314. And I don't have a slide prepared on it. If you want to go back in the other archives for lesson 9, there's a section 9.1 and 9.2. And in there I do talk about the verbs that change meaning in the preterite. If you're having any trouble with it, you might want to look back over it. To be super honest, it isn't that big of a deal. It's just sort of reading through it and understanding the differences in how these verbs conocer, saber, poder, and querer can change meaning in the preterite. Okay? In the next lesson, you're going to learn the imperfect tense, which is another past tense, and it'll make more sense how you would use the preterite versus the imperfect. And that's why I'm not stressing section 9.2 right now, because you don't know the imperfect yet, so you're probably using the preterite in every situation, which is fine. That's what I want you to do since you don't know the imperfect yet. But this will make more sense when you put it in the context of lesson 10, when you're supposed to use the imperfect. Okay? And this concludes what I wanted to present for this morning. Melissa, do you have any questions, or is there anything that you wanted to go over this morning? Okay. Well, if not, I'm going to go ahead and stop the archive. And good luck to everyone on your test for this week. If you haven't taken it yet, and as you go through this, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me via email. I'll be happy to try and help. And just a reminder for all of you that have signed up for a time for your oral interview, those are going to be next week. Unless you're in the 102 W01 class and we've had to change your day. Please remember to be preparing and practicing for the oral interview. And I'll be back in here on Thursday from 9 to 11 this week. If anybody wants to practice, or if you want to go ahead and do your interview and get it out of the way, we can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the archive.